Small talk feels like torture. You're standing at a gathering, beverage in hand, surrounded by people you barely know. Somebody mentions the commute, and suddenly the entire circle erupts like it's the most riveting subject ever discussed. Everyone's engaged, laughing at appropriate moments, sharing endless anecdotes about bad routes and construction zones. Meanwhile, you're examining the condensation on your glass, questioning whether anyone present has experienced a substantive thought in the past year. For the average person, surface-level conversation is social lubrication, a risk-free method to establish rapport. But for people with high intelligence, it's psychological torture. Your mind demands complexity, puzzles, concepts, debates, anything with substance. Instead, you're cycling through discussions about climate conditions, the hour, or somebody's lunch selection. Researchers identify this as elevated need for cognition, a craving for meaningful and challenging thought. When that need goes unfulfilled, you mentally check out, disconnecting while everyone else forms connections over absolutely nothing. From their perspective, you appear dismissive or withdrawn. But the reality is, your mind is malnourished, because when you're built to think at deeper levels, quiet contemplation holds more value than another exchange about how incredible it is that the week is almost over. You measure every word before speaking. The average person communicates like they're flinging arrows blindfolded, quick, careless, and hoping something connects. But you, every phrase feels like positioning pieces on a board. You hesitate, reconsider, mentally edit multiple times, hunting for the precise terminology that won't be twisted or misconstrued. During exchanges, this makes you appear guarded, possibly slow. But internally, you're operating an entire quality assurance system. Language passes through drafting, evaluation, and clearance before it ever exits your mouth. For individuals with high intelligence, this isn't merely a tendency, it's protection. You understand that language constructs reality. A thoughtless remark can demolish an idea, or even worse, damage a connection. So you evaluate every unit of sound like it's precious metal. Researchers describe this as linguistic exactness, the pattern of sharper minds treating words as instruments rather than filler. But here's the trade-off. While you're constructing the ideal statement, everyone else has already progressed. To them, you sound uncertain, perhaps even remote. They occupy silence with noise. You occupy it with computation. And when you finally contribute, it arrives like a surgical blade instead of a wave. Precise, calculated, but slightly delayed for the moment. Social situations feel like navigating without instructions. It's not that you lack things to say, it's that your brain is processing so many variables, it forgets to follow social protocols. Visual engagement, pacing, inflection, they all malfunction when you're too occupied dissecting the interaction instead of simply existing within it. Picture someone asking how things are going, and instead of a simple fine, you pause, overthink, and launch into a lengthy breakdown of your entire month. Or worse, you introduce some obscure information nobody requested, and the space goes dead. For people with elevated intelligence, social engagement can feel like performing in theater where everyone else received the script except you. Researchers explain this stems from alternative thinking patterns, the brain's inclination to pursue unexpected associations. It makes you exceptional with concepts, but clumsy with individuals. To others, your rhythm seems incorrect, your wit too specialized, your presence slightly off. And while they depart thinking you're strange, you depart mentally replaying the entire exchange like footage, wishing you could revise it. Building genuine friendships feels impossible. The average person approaches friendship like convenience dining. Grab whoever's available, label it connection, and continue forward. They discuss sports, exchange internet humor, maybe consume alcohol together on weekends, and that satisfies them. But for individuals with high intelligence, it doesn't. You're not seeking something quick and throwaway. You're seeking something that endures. Surface interactions feel like nutritional void. Manufactured enthusiasm feels suffocating. And existing among people who don't truly comprehend you only amplifies the isolation. So you screen carefully. You withhold. You wait for the uncommon connection that actually ignites something. Researchers studying behavioral patterns have observed that more intelligent individuals often favor fewer, more substantial friendships, and they're prepared to endure extended periods without company rather than populate the void with incompatible people. The downside: externally it appears you're isolated or selective, but actually you're conserving your resources. Because for a mind like yours, one authentic friend holds more worth than countless superficial contacts. And honestly, existing alone feels less isolating than existing in a crowd where nobody's genuinely communicating anything. Crowded environments drain you completely. For the average person, a packed schedule means vitality. Packed bars, loud dining establishments, social gatherings that extend until dawn. But for you, that's not vitality. It's depletion. Masses exhaust you. Perpetual noise feels like mental static. So instead of gravitating toward commotion, you withdraw into peaceful environments where you can actually process. It's not that you dislike humans. It's that existing around excessive numbers simultaneously feels like your brain is struggling with countless processes, all demanding attention. Eventually, you discover that isolation isn't merely preference, it's fuel. Still, externally, it doesn't appear that way. To everyone else, you're the individual who perpetually declines, the connection who vanishes, the one who never appears. They interpret your recharge as dismissal. The contradiction is that you might be considering them, valuing them, even strategizing for them, but you can only accomplish that after you've separated. Solitary time isn't escape, it's upkeep. And without it, your mind collapses. Every decision becomes a research project. The average person can select footwear in 2 minutes. You're stuck comparing cost, longevity, customer feedback, and whether they'll still coordinate with your wardrobe 5 years forward. For individuals with elevated intelligence, nothing is straightforward. Your brain refuses to accept adequate. It's perpetually evaluating options, pursuing the optimal solution. Researchers label this analytical paralysis when excessive consideration transforms a basic selection into an endurance test. On the positive side, you circumvent errors most people commit. On the negative side, you waste hours attempting to make determinations that should require seconds. Connections say you can't decide, but that's inaccurate. You decide abundantly. You just decide gradually, meticulously, and with more perspectives than anyone requested. And the contradiction, after all that consideration, you sometimes conclude by selecting the identical option you would have chosen initially. Mental stimulation isn't optional, it's essential. The average person completes their obligations, collapses on furniture, and lets their consciousness go vacant. But you can't tolerate it. When your mind isn't engaging with something, literature, challenges, educational content, even bizarre online tangents, you experience agitation. It's like your brain begins wandering in confinement, tapping barriers, demanding something to process. One evening, you're completing word games until sunrise. The next, you're consuming educational content on subjects you'll never apply just because your mind requires sustenance. Connections tell you to decompress or simply consume entertainment. But for you, passive content feels like deteriorating. Research has discovered that more intelligent individuals often pursue what's termed mental engagement. Essentially, activities that keep the brain exerting effort instead of idling. That's why you conclude managing interests, secondary endeavors, and late evening thought patterns while everyone else is semi-conscious. It's not about output, it's necessity. Because for your brain, rest doesn't mean deactivating. Rest means discovering something new to master. The expectation to excel never stops. For some individuals, achievement is supplementary. If they succeed, excellent. If not, existence continues. But for you, it's different. The instant people recognize you're intelligent, the burden descends. Educators expect flawless performance. Family discusses grand futures. Connections assume you'll resolve every challenge. And most damaging, you demand it from yourself. Every determination feels significant because failure doesn't merely mean failure. It feels like confirmation you squandered capability. It's what researchers occasionally term accomplishment pressure. Externally, you appear motivated, ambitious, unstoppable. But internally, it feels like operating a competition with no conclusion. You excel on an assessment, but the subsequent one's more difficult. You secure an advancement, and suddenly the standard elevates again. Achievement doesn't ease you. It only resets the pressure higher. People believe intelligence makes existence simpler, but sometimes it just makes the obstacle taller because regardless of how far you ascend, the summit keeps shifting. You're your own harshest judge. Individuals with elevated intelligence carry a hidden burden. You perceive every imperfection in yourself, even the ones nobody else detects. The average person dismisses errors. They forget the incorrect terminology they used, the uncomfortable remark, the undertaking that wasn't flawless. But you replay it, you dissect it, you archive it like documentation in legal proceedings. It's not superiority, it's the contrary. Your brain notices particulars so intensely that you can't stop weaponizing them against yourself. Researchers occasionally label this perfectionist cognition, the inclination to maintain yourself to impossible criteria. You complete a composition and believe it could have been superior. You deliver a presentation and only recall the single word you stumbled on. And when people commend you, instead of feeling accomplished, you question if they simply didn't detect the errors. The contradiction is being harshly critical makes you superior, sharper, more cautious. But it also means you're never genuinely content. You're pursuing an image of yourself that doesn't exist. Your thoughts become entire universes. The average person can deactivate their consciousness. They fantasize momentarily, then return to actuality. But for you, drifting into thought isn't a pause. It's a gravitational pull. One instant you're observing your beverage, and the subsequent you've constructed an entire hypothesis about temporal mechanics, humanity's trajectory, or why certain birds inhabit every metropolitan area on the planet. Hours dissolve without you even recognizing. Educators used to label it insufficient attention. Connections say you're disconnected, but inside your consciousness, there's an entire cosmos developing. Researchers label this mental drift. And in individuals with elevated intelligence, it tends to accelerate dramatically. It's innovation, analysis, and curiosity colliding simultaneously. The downside, the external realm keeps advancing while you're absorbed in another one. You overlook directions, forget scheduled events, and enter spaces not understanding why you're there. Externally, it appears like distraction, but actually, it's the expense of a mind that refuses to remain stationary. Simple answers are impossible for you. Ask the average person for guidance, and they'll indicate a direction. Ask you, and they receive a comprehensive lecture. You can't simply provide a response. You provide the background, the logic, and 3 supplementary possibilities. Your brain refuses to deliver surface information when there's a deeper stratum waiting underneath. On one hand, it makes you comprehensive. On the other, it makes people's attention wander while you're partially through clarifying the reasoning behind the conclusion. Communication specialists occasionally label this the burden of expertise. When you comprehend too much to maintain simplicity, to you, particulars are lucidity. To everyone else, they're saturation. And when you finally cease communicating, the individual who inquired probably doesn't even recall the initial question. The contradiction is that your clarification is typically accurate, but the transmission drowns it in so much supplementary context that people confuse intelligence for chaos. Rules and authority don't impress you. For many individuals, authority is reassuring. If the supervisor states it, if the instructor records it, if the manual lists it, then it must be accurate. But for individuals with elevated intelligence, automatic trust doesn't manifest easily. You challenge directives, examine assumptions, and sometimes get characterized as problematic because you won't simply accept things. It's not defiance for its own purpose. It's instinct. You perceive flaws, gaps, and contradictions others overlook, and your mind refuses to abandon them. Research on analytical reasoning has demonstrated that more intelligent individuals are more inclined to challenge authority when something doesn't align. But this capability comes with social resistance. Educators believe you're confrontational. Supervisors believe you're rebellious. Connections believe you're pessimistic, all because you'd rather pursue accuracy than follow the narrative. The most damaging aspect, the individuals who dismiss your questioning often conclude relying on you later. Once they realize the regulations weren't perfect after all, living in the moment is nearly impossible. The average person can exist in the instant. They appreciate a meal without concerning about tomorrow or react to humor without analyzing it. But for you, the present is elusive. Your brain is perpetually operating forward, computing the subsequent step, or circling backward, examining what already occurred. You're positioned at a meal, but you're replaying an exchange from days prior. You're on a break, but you're strategizing what to accomplish when you return. Instead of experiencing now, you're confined in previously and subsequently. This is occasionally labeled future-directed cognition, the capacity to imagine results and strategize ahead. It's an advantage, but it steals the instant directly before you. People instruct you to simply decompress or exist in the now. But to a mind constructed like yours, that's almost unattainable because while everyone else is existing in actual time, you're occupied existing in 2 sequences simultaneously, the one that already manifested and the one that hasn't even initiated.